The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. This is Jamie Cashman, and we also have Lucas Benkin as a part of this webinar today to outline the Iowa State Association of County Supervisors 2021 legislative recommendations. And so just because of a lot of different things, because of COVID, the development of the supervisors' legislative agenda for 2021 certainly has been affected. And typically how this policy development process has gone in the past is that in July, there is a request for proposals that go out to all county supervisors to provide any feedback in regards to things that they'd like to see to be a part of the legislative package for the next year. And then after those proposals are gathered together, the ISAC's legislative committee meets, and they met on August 19th of this year to consider all of the proposals and to review the legislative package from last year. And so what you see before you are the legislative committee members, and then that was chaired by Mark Campbell from Webster County. And so based on their deliberation on August 19th, these are the following recommendations that they are putting forward. Now, typically, the ISACs has voted on this legislative package when they have their annual business meeting at the ISAC annual conference. And as you well know, that the ISAC annual conference didn't take place because of COVID-19. And so there had to be something put together as an alternative for all of ISAC's members to vote on the legislative package. And so what we will be outlining today are the recommendations, the draft recommendations to the ISAC's full membership. And then Rach will be providing an overview of the online voting process to ratify the recommendations. And so without any further ado, we'll start. So like I said before, here are the members of the legislative committee that reviewed all the proposals that you submitted. And then moving on the first couple of things that we're going to cover are on the 2021 legislative statements. Now, as we've seen over the last few years, and just to explain what these legislative statements are about, these are basic, overwhelming set of principles that ISACs and the Iowa State Association of County Supervisors believe are just basic tenets that these are the top things that they stand for, regardless of any additional proposals that are out there. And certainly the first one on home rule continues to be an issue, as we've seen this basic tenet being attacked time and time again for issues such as zoning and weight limits. And what we saw this year again was on attacking the county's ability and county supervisors to set weapons policy in courthouses. And so this again was something that the legislative committee believed that should be carried forward, as we've had for many years now. Next is on state mandates. This is again one of tremendous importance, as we've seen constantly, it seems, again, as we've dealt with the tax on home rule. It seems that the Iowa General Assembly continues to continue to place additional mandates on counties, most recently in regard to providing mental health services, with additional services provided for children's and complex needs. And then there's a whole host of other things too that the state continues to put mandates on. Another one would be, case in point, housing of the Department of Human Services offices in county courthouses. So this again is a statement of tremendous importance to county supervisors. And then lastly, the funding of local services. Again, we believe that county government can best provide these services, these vital services, at a local level. But time and time again, we see a lot of these in terms of fees and so forth, and our ability to generate revenue to provide these services is continued to be squelched by the Iowa General Assembly, whether it goes from driver's license, marriage license, and a whole host of other fees that are out there. We believe they just need to give us the tools to provide these essential services. So as we look at the 2021 draft legislative objectives, and to explain just a little bit difference, we're going to talk about legislative objectives, and then we're going to talk about policy statements after this. And so what we'll be looking at first, and what is a legislative objective? Well, this is something that our members feel that needs to have a specific legislative remedy to attack these issues or to address these issues. And so these are the top things that you will be recommending for Lucas and I to go up on the Hill and lobby on your behalf. And not shockingly, again, that's risen to the top is on mental health and disability services. We were, this, obviously, as you guys are well aware, that mental health has been a top priority, specifically sustainable mental health funding has been a top priority for many, many years now for supervisors. And while at the start of the 2020 session, we were very pleased that the governor had advocated to be a part of her Invest in Iowa Act, that a portion of the sales tax would be dedicated specifically to mental health. So we were very pleased that Governor Reynolds recognized that. Like a lot of different things that happened with COVID-19, obviously the feasibility of raising the sales tax at a time of pandemic certainly became not feasible. And so while that had to go on by the wayside, we were pleased that the governor included in the spending of some of the CARES Act funding $30 million for specifically to the mental health regions to provide services. So what we are again asking for, first and foremost, is for the state to provide the necessary funding to the counties and the regions to ensure stability, in the mental health delivery system. And then certainly we had some major issues even before COVID-19, but certainly the demand for COVID related services, basic core services, because of COVID-19 has only increased. So we're first asking for state funding, not only for those basic core, but for those additional services such as for children, and then also for complex mental health needs. And then if that funding would not be provided by the state, we would continue to ask for the state to allow counties to be able to raise their mental health levy cap to be able to fund the necessary services. And then if any of the financial remedies would not go into effect, we're specifically asking for that a lot of these mandates that are being placed on counties and regions should be pushed back for at least 1 to 2 years on children's mental health, and then also complex mental health services as well. And then lastly, I'm sure many of you are aware that actually do have a carry forward balance in their mental health fund, that the carry forward balance requirement of 40% would be pushed off as well. And so with that, I will turn it over to Lucas to talk about tax reform.
Thanks, Jamie, and good afternoon, everyone. The biggest part of our tax reform objective is, of course, on the backfill. As you know, it's a reimbursement for the legislative action taken in 2013 to reduce the taxable valuation on commercial and industrial property by 10%. And so the backfill makes up for the lost revenue that comes with that reduction. And we saw in 2018 that there was legislation that would either drastically reduce the amount or phase it out entirely. We didn't see anything last year, and we've been happy to see that the governor has been consistently fully funding the backfill in her proposed budget that comes out each January. But we certainly need to make sure that continues to happen. It is a standing limited appropriation, so oftentimes the standings appropriation bill is one of the last couple bills that is passed each year. So it is certainly a session-long effort to make sure that legislators understand the importance and then make sure that it is funded in that final bill. I'll also note that because it's standing limited, the legislature would need to take action to not have it fully funded. So nothing happening is a good thing in this case. The other parts of the tax reform, the decoupling on ag property, to be honest, probably a very heavy lift at this point with the current makeup of the legislature, but we keep those conversations going. Just pointing out that there are some improvements that could be made. And then finally, we do have the piece on the sales tax increase that Jamie touched on, and we'll probably touch on again as we get to water quality and quantity. So I'll turn it back to him.
All right, well, thank you, Lucas. So again, over the last few years, water quality and quantity management that was added last year continues to be of importance to supervisors. As I talked about mental health earlier with the governor's proposal for raising an increase of a penny in sales tax would obviously fund IWIL and the Iowa Water and Land Legacy Trust Fund. And so we are very pleased by, two of our top priorities were being addressed by what the governor had called for at the start of session. But unfortunately, as I mentioned before, that obviously it did not become politically feasible to raise the sales tax. It is going to be, as we will be looking at dealing with COVID-19 into the 2021 session. It will be, as Lucas had talked about, some of the other things, an incredible lift to get an increase in the sales tax for this. But many a time that things that we have fought for have taken many years. Case in point, raising of the gas tax. And so while at times it wasn't feasible to be addressed by the Iowa General Assembly, there were things that supervisors wanted to make sure that were a part of the package each and every year. And then on quantity management, as we have seen, certainly some of these 500-year events specifically on flooding on both the east and west coast of Iowa, that we see there continues to be a need specifically for additional funding, specifically for flood mitigation efforts. So that, again, will be an ask of county supervisors. And then I'll turn it over to Lucas.
All right, broadband expansion is a new objective this year. As we know, the rural areas, but also some urban areas are both underserved or unserved when it comes to broadband. And so we're placing a new emphasis on making sure that the policy is in place to expand, to incentivize, but perhaps the biggest caveat is that we don't want to go around local control as far as decisions by the zoning commissions or the boards of supervisors. So it will be kind of a balance there, but we know that our citizens need to be served and broadband needs to get out to every acre of Iowa. The next is also a new objective on EMS. We made quite a lot of progress this year, but unfortunately with the suspension of the session because of the pandemic, we kind of lost traction, and it wasn't one of those top items that got done when they came back for a week and a half. What we're trying to do is allow the boards of supervisors to declare EMS an essential service and then impose a property tax to pay for that. The bill that we were working on last year also allowed for the Board of Supervisors to impose the income surtax. So they would have the option of property tax or income tax to fund EMS at the county level. And then also the current 5-year limitation would not be in place. So as we've talked about before, you know, you make these large investments in the services, and then what if the voters after 5 years say no? You know, what happens then? So allowing the Board of Supervisors to fund it by their vote, and then getting rid of the 5-year timeline.
All right, thank you, Lucas. And so next, we'll tackle the 2021 draft policy statements. And so just to further explain what the difference is between a policy statement and an objective, what we had outlined just previously were the things that we will be lobbying for, that we will be pushing for a specific legislative remedy, basically just asking for drafting of a bill to move that forward, or several bills depending on the priority. And then a policy statement, what that does is provide overall guidance to Lucas and myself on other pieces of legislation that are introduced that have significance to counties. And so the first one that was identified by the Supervisors Legislative Policy Committee was on alternative project delivery. And this is something that has come up in the past. And basically that ISACS is strongly in favor of allowing counties to utilize alternative project delivery contract methods, such as design build and construction manager at risk in the development of public improvement projects. While we're not certainly asking for a mandate to have this, it just gives the counties additional tools to put together public improvement projects, specifically things such as administration buildings and county jails. And next, I will turn it over to Lucas for ATVs.
All right, thanks, Jamie. We have seen legislation, I think, almost every year saying that ATVs, UTVs should be allowed on secondary roads statewide for kind of a blanket policy. We believe that this should be a local decision. The boards of supervisors, in consultation with their county engineer, the county sheriff, and the county attorney, should make a decision on whether or not it is right for their county to allow vehicles, all-terrain vehicles on secondary roads, and then set up the rules for such travel if they decide to allow it, rather than just a statewide policy circumventing local control.
All right, and then moving on to bonding for courthouse, for county courthouse improvements. This has been a long time priority for the supervisors. Again, kind of building upon the first one, having to deal with alternative project delivery, the whole issue of further bonding. And again, the county supervisors are strongly in favor that the bond amount that's limited underneath Iowa code should be limited to the amount of the bonds issued instead of the total cost of the project. And then next, getting back to what I mentioned before on one of the legislative statements in regard to mandates, again, providing security for district courts and county courthouses continues to be a mandate placed on counties with no additional revenue provided. And so as we've seen things, not only even before COVID-19 and now even further, the need for additional revenue to be provided to counties to provide security is needed now more than ever. Next is on the continuous county requirement for mental health regions. As we've seen over the last couple of years, a realignment of some counties within mental health regions. As a result of that, it has caused basically the state requirement that each county must be contiguous to leave certain counties kind of out on an island outside of be able to be a part of a region. And so we will continue to advocate that counties should have the ability to join whatever region that they see fit. As we've seen, a lot of the services, not a lot of the services, I take that back, but some of the services that aren't able to be provided a contiguous county that would go over maybe over into another region, that this certainly isn't needed to be mandated that those counties be contiguous. Basically, as we've seen, unfortunately, because of the lack of availability of beds, we've had counties having to go to several regions away to find a bed. So to have this requirement that counties be contiguous certainly doesn't represent the current landscape. And then I'll turn it over to Lucas.
Okay, Forest Reserve is a returning policy statement. I think we've been dealing with this for maybe 3 or 4 years now, and kind of a delicate balance because of both the property tax revenue and then also the conservation aspect. And so we certainly understand the importance of the program. Iowa is usually 48, 49, or 50th in the amount of public conservation land. So we're dependent on those individual landowners to keep their property in forest or other type habitats. So we completely understand the tax exemption, but we also understand that there are abuses of the system. And so we continue to work with legislators to figure out how we might tighten up that program to figure out who are the good actors and who are the bad actors. And so we'll continue to do that. And this policy statement just kind of gives us the guiding principle to navigate that when legislation comes up.
All right, thank you, Lucas. Next is to increase the Iowa sales tax by up to 1 cent. I think this has been tackled a couple of different ways throughout our discussion today, specifically on doing this for the outdoor and recreational trust fund. I'm sorry, the National Resources and Outdoor Recreational Trust Fund, to fully fund that, raise it by a penny, and then also, as we've had discussion, to use a portion of that penny for mental health services. Again, it's going to have a very uphill fight, considering the times that we're living in and the challenge we'll face in raising the sales tax. But again, this is something, this overarching statement, that when it would be feasible, that we will continue to fight for this. The other issue that we will be fighting for as well, if they were to use a portion of the sales tax for mental health funding, that it should be constitutionally protected. So that's another thing that's been added to this, that we want to make sure that if it is used for mental health, that it is protected. I'll turn it over to Lucas for land banks.
The land banks was a new addition, I believe, last year, and it came about because a legislator reached out and said, hey, this is what a lot of other states are doing. We should really have something like this in Iowa. And basically, the creation of a land bank would be among counties, cities, to work to handle properties that are blighted, that are, in distress. They may be up for tax sale. And so this would allow the entity, the newly created entity, to take possession of those properties and turn them around, get them back up and running, back on the tax rolls. And so it would be an intergovernmental an arrangement that could benefit both cities and counties. And I think I will go on to local government reform. This one is extremely simple. Just any mandate, any reorganization idea that comes from the state, we would oppose. The current system we know works, and if there was ever to be any sort of reform, it should come from the counties up to the state, not from the state down to the counties. And then road use tax fund, I think the biggest piece of this that the legislative committee talked about was on dyed fuels. And we have been in conversations in the past about implementing a tax on dyed fuels, but then making sure that it was earmarked for secondary roads and bridges. And I think that would build a coalition if everyone knew that it would be just for secondary roads and bridges. You know, in 2015, we increased the fuel tax. As Jamie said earlier, you know, that took quite a coalition and it took quite a number of years. So that might not be something that's on the horizon, but it's always something that we're willing to talk about. And the final thing I'll say on secondary roads is we'll continue to oppose any weight increases. It seems like the last few years there's been just one thing after another where the weight limits have been increased, and you know, the secondary road system is not prepared for that. It was designed on a certain set of expectations, and it will continue to take a toll if they continue to increase the weight limits.
All right, thank you, Lucas. Next is on a review of the master matrix system. Certainly, this has been an issue that counties and specifically county supervisors have been dealing with for many, many years. The quandary that we face is it's extremely difficult to develop consensus in terms of the matrix between county supervisors, because for some counties the matrix works very, very well, and for other counties it does not. And so specifically how we've adjusted this language this year, because we have seen everything all over the board, from asking for a moratorium to just provide specific local control in terms of siting and have that placed directly with counties. Again, like I said, we've dealt with a lot of issues, and so this is a language that after the deliberation of the Legislative Policy Committee came up with, and so they're specifically asking for an interim study to explore the current system, as the master matrix is over 20 some odd years now, that our members feel that now is the time to look at that, to explore different issues such as siting, separation distances, and looking at requiring a minimum amount in each area of the master matrix should be considered for passage. So that is the change that we've had in years past. But we know, again, this will be an extremely contentious issue amongst our members, and we will continue to seek feedback. But that is where the committee believes that we should be at this time. And then I'll turn it over to Lucas for TIF.
All right, thanks, Jamie. So on TIF, basically we just want to make sure that there are no abuses. It's a great tool for economic development for both cities and counties, but we want to make sure that there's a limited amount of use as far as the years of the TIF district set up. So we want to make sure that it's not perpetual, should be phased out. And if there's any addition or reorganization, then there should be a renewal set up. So again, we understand it's a great tool. Counties are using it, but maybe just tightening those rules on TIF districts. Moving on to wind energy. We were able to get legislation passed in 2018, probably not quite as far as we wanted to go. The issue is that wind turbines get a special valuation under 427B of Iowa Code, and that puts in place a step-up process for their taxable valuation, starting at 0% of acquisition value, going up 5% a year up to 30%. They also get the rollback on industrial property, which is the 10% rollback, and they also get the business property tax credit. So the stacking of all of these benefits was probably not exactly what was intended, and it's probably not fair to all the other business, commercial, industrial properties that the wind turbines are getting all these stacked on property tax breaks. So our proposal is to continue with the step-up special valuation in 427B, but they would not be eligible for the commercial industrial rollback or the business property tax credit. And finally, we have a new addition, wind and solar energy generation siting. Very simple, just allow counties to make the decisions on those siting issues. The local zoning commission, board of adjustment, board of supervisors, to make decisions on the siting of any new wind or solar farms.
Thank you, Lucas. And so now, after we've presented the draft legislative package from covering all the statements, the objectives, and the policy statements, we'll certainly entertain any questions that you might have.
I don't have any questions coming through at this time.
All right. Well, certainly, as things pop up, certainly don't hesitate to reach out to Lucas and myself. Also, in addition, while these are the issues that were addressed right now, there's certainly other things that pop up even during session. So please continue to reach out to Lucas and myself at any time with any issues that you might have or any legislation that you would have questions about. And so with that, I will turn it over to Rachel for a review of the online voting process to ratify the ISAC's legislative package for 2021.
Thanks, Jamie. As Jamie has mentioned, there is a necessity to have online voting. It's something we've done for ISAC for the past few years, and it's gone very well. And I'll kind of just run you through the process and then answer any questions. It should be pretty easy to explain, and as always, we're here to answer any questions that you may have along the way. Online voting is officially opened. As you hopefully saw this morning in your email, this email came through with a link to go and vote. So some of you may have already done so, but in case you have any questions, here we go. One vote for each Iowa County supervisor. That's very important. After the voting has closed at midnight on September 18th, September 19th, we will go ahead and pull the votes. We'll kind of audit those, make sure there's only one supervisor who's voted, and make sure everybody who has voted is a supervisor, and then we'll tally everything. As I said, there's a link in your email, and if you want to go to the next slide, we've also put a request link on our website. All supervisor government relations materials are located on the ISAC website. Just go to the legislative tab and then click on Supervisors Government Relations. That's where you can find updated materials and basically anything we have going on with the supervisors in this area. So if you want to go to the next slide. As I said, the online voting tool will look like this. It's a very simple SurveyMonkey tool that we use for a lot of our surveys. You shouldn't have any issues. If you did for some reason, just reach out to us and we'll send you a paper copy, a PDF copy, and help you to complete that as well. We'll ask first of all for your name and your county. That'll just be how you verify who you are as we go through those votes. And then if you want to go to the next slide, what we're going to do is we're going to ask you to vote yay, nay, or abstain on each of the legislative objectives and the statements individually. As you'll see with these, we do offer you to put in a comment on each of your votes. This can be used just to explain why you voted a certain way, or our team also finds it very helpful to include any information that you may have, or further information, anything that would help us in the lobbying process, I suppose. If you want to go to the next slide. The policy statements we will vote on as a package. Again, this is the same option as before, and then the opportunity to leave a comment. Make sure that you do click submit vote at the end. If you don't click that submit vote, your vote will not be tallied. So that is just the way to say officially, I have voted. There you go. Again, one vote for per county supervisor, and that is it. So it's pretty simple, as I explained. Just click on the link and then you can run through it pretty quickly. Does anybody have any questions about the voting tool? It looks like we did have a question come through, but this is for Jamie and Lucas. Let's see, a wind energy conversion property tax valuation issue. Lucas, is this you?
It is me. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, so I believe the question was just wanting a little more detail on that policy statement. So again, I would say 427B puts in place the incremental increase on net acquisition, starting at 0, going up to 30. So our position is they shouldn't be able to, for lack of a better term, double dip on the tax benefits and also get the rollback on commercial industrial property or the business property tax credit, because that code section says special evaluation in lieu of, meaning, in my opinion, in our opinion, that they don't get to collect all of them. Just looking through the question here, I believe there was also another question on the citing, and I would just reiterate our position is that that should always be a county decision. There should never be a blanket statewide position or mandate. Each county needs to evaluate that. The Board of Supervisors with their zoning department, with their county attorney, to figure out exactly how they want to handle that. That's not something that the state should be able to do for 99 counties that are all very unique. And I can follow up with the supervisor that submitted that if there are additional questions or more concerns, but I think that's where we're at right now.
Thanks, Lucas. I don't see any questions about the voting tool. If you have any, again, just go ahead and shoot us an email. You can send it to me specifically, or always you can come to support@iowacounties.org is a way to reach a lot of us at once as well. Lastly, I will excitedly mention that the Certified Iowa County Supervisor Program is finally here. It's been a long time in the making, and hopefully you've heard me talk about it a number of times. Registration is now open. This is a continuing education program specifically for Iowa County supervisors that the Supervisors Association has been developing over the past several years. The program itself will last over 2 years. It will begin in January of 2021 with the ISAC New County Officer School. Registration is free to all Iowa County supervisors. And basically the way we are trying to run it is to be as inclusive as possible. And we're going to offer CEUs during existing supervisor and ISAC events. Obviously, we don't know exactly what events are going to look like in the future, so we will keep our options open in terms of being online, hybrid, some online or in person, or totally in person, hopefully sometime soon. So that is that. I am happy to report registration did open, I think, last week, and we already have over 20 people registered for the program, or 20 supervisors registered. So I see some of you who are on here are not registered yet, so I won't call you out by name, but I'll expect to have you registered sometime soon. Does anybody have any questions about the program now, or as you know, I'm always available to answer questions as well in the future.
I don't see any at this time.
Thanks, Katie.
All right, well, thank you, Rach. So do we have any other further questions in regard to the legislative package?
Nope, we are all clear as of right now.
Very good. Well, like I said earlier, certainly don't be shy to reach out to Lucas and I with any questions that you might have, and any other ideas that would come up coming up here in the fall going into the winter. We live to serve, and so anything that you would like to see addressed, please don't hesitate to contact us. I would be remiss if I didn't mention also today is the deadline for the first round of the CARES Act funding, specifically what the state has allocated through the local government relief fund. And so these are COVID-19 related expenses from March 1st through July 31st. And if your county did not apply by today, don't worry. There is another round that will be going from August 1st through September 30th, with the next due date will be on October 9th. So if there are some additional expenses that have come up, please don't hesitate, or you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us, and we'll help you through the process. It's been kind of we've been waiting for a long time to get this funding, and we want to make sure this money gets out to all the counties as quickly as possible. And so with that, certainly again, and again, on behalf of Lucas and myself and our entire team that's on the meeting today, we can't thank you enough for your advocacy. You certainly were incredible importance to us as this crazy 2020 session wrapped up, and you'll be even more important to us for your continued support going into 2021. So with that, I will bid all of you guys a good afternoon, and thank you very much.